To call tonight's meeting to order, if you could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I'll call roll tonight. Durfler here, Sprick
Here.
Kakamo. Is Kakamo here? Ferraro.
Here.
Herber. Norris.
Present.
Zavala. Like to make an announcement that Borough Council had an executive session tonight to discuss legal and personnel matters. I'm just going to shift up the agenda a little bit. We do have some proclamations and a swearing in ceremony. So we're going to start with that and then move on to public comments and our action item. So I'm going to turn things over to Mayor Fedek right now for a proclamation designating October's Domestic Violence Awareness Month.
Thanks. We did get it right. Good evening, everybody. October is designated as Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and Kathleen from the Domestic Violence Center is here and going to share a little bit of information with us about the center. Here, why don't you take the mic and
Thank you. I first want to thank the gentleman right in front of me, 2468, and the woman. Great to see you. What I want to thank you for is Kennett Square's police department's participation in our lethality assessment program, also known as the LAP program. We've seen a huge increase in individuals who are fleeing domestic violence come forward as a result of the works that the police department do when they're on call. Last year, over 2,500 individuals called our hotline for help. 1 in 4 women is a victim of domestic violence. 1 in 7 men experiences domestic violence, and 1 in 3 men experience severe domestic violence. Domestic Violence Center of Chester County's mission is to reduce, remedy, and prevent domestic violence in Chester County. Our vision is to eliminate domestic violence in Chester County. We have a very lean staff of counselors, legal advocates, and I, of course, am the fundraiser, and no good mission goes unserved without donors like you. Please mark your calendars for next Tuesday night, October 10th. It is going to be in this park right here, right outside the Borough Hall, and it's Light the Night, and you'll see purple lights and purple ribbons in Kennett for Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Thank you.
I'll read the proclamation that we're going to issue to Kathleen on behalf of the Domestic Violence Center. Whereas domestic violence impacts our families, homes, communities, and schools. Whereas ending violence in the home, at work, and in the community requires vigilance, dedication from every part of our society. Whereas Domestic Violence Month evolved from the Day of Unity observed in October 1981 by the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence. Whereas in 1987, the coalition observed the first Domestic Violence Awareness Month, the same year that the first national toll-free hotline for domestic violence was established. Whereas during the month of October, victim advocate groups, centers, service workers, and many other organizations come together to connect with those who work to end domestic violence, to celebrate those who have survived, and to mourn those who have died as a result of domestic violence. And whereas it is critical that those seeking help or services have access to proper care and treatment, whereas Domestic Violence Awareness Month is an opportunity to stand with domestic violence survivors, to celebrate the progress made in combating these crimes, and to recommit to reducing domestic violence in the Commonwealth. Now therefore, I, Matthew Fedek, Mayor of the Borough of Kennett Square, on this fourth day of October 2023, do hereby proclaim October 2023 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month in the Borough of Kennett Square. And I call upon all residents to speak out against domestic violence in our community and to support the efforts of the Domestic Violence Center of Chester County in their efforts to assist victims of these crimes in finding the help and healing that they need. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Yes, I will sign and give you a copy. Just give me 1 second. Thanks for coming.
Thanks. Thanks. Have a good evening.
You're welcome. Thanks
Thank
for
you,
coming.
Kathleen.
Thank you.
And next we have a swearing in of our new full-time police officer and parking enforcement officer, and the chief's going to help with that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. So I'd just like to give a little background first of the two new members that are joining our department. First, we have a police officer, Christian J. Walker. Christian graduated from the Delaware County Police Academy in June of 2022. Officer Walker began his law enforcement career working for the Glen Olden Police Department, as well as the Upper Providence Police Department. Officer Walker was hired part-time by the Kennett Square Police Department in August of 2023 and began his field training program at that time. Officer Walker was transitioned to full-time in September, where he is currently assigned to the patrol division. In his free time, Officer Walker enjoys playing ice hockey, traveling, and hiking with his dog and family. Our next member is joining our parking enforcement, Mario M. Ramato Jr. Mario was born and raised in Kennett Square. He graduated from the Kennett High School and Westchester University. Mario began his law enforcement career here in Kennett Square Borough in June of 1993. He moved to New Garden Township Police / Southern Chester County Regional Police in 1997. Mario retired from Southern Chester County Regional in June of 2023 after 30 years in law enforcement and was hired as our full-time parking enforcement officer in September. We welcome both of you to our department. Incredible men. Mario, I've had the pleasure of knowing for 30 plus years now. He's a fine young man. And now I would ask Officer Walker, please come up.
And I will enforce the law of this Commonwealth and the ordinances of the Borough of Kennett Square. And I will discharge the duties of my office of fidelity as a police officer for the Borough.
And next, we'd ask Mario Ramato to please come up.
Typically, I know that folks like to take some pictures and extend some congratulations right now, so let's take like a 3 or 5 minute break so that can happen. Yeah, I know.
Right.
Now I'll call the meeting back to order and we'll move on to public comment. We have 5 regulars here, well, 4 and Rob too, so you know the drill.
Monday night was a classic example of what this borough council lacks. Of what this borough council lacks, and that's intensity. We let people run over us. Had the YMCA in here, guy lied to you. Absolutely lied to you because he wants credit. Because he wants credit, and you know, instead of you telling him what you wanted, he told you 3 things he wanted. 1 or 3 things. We should be telling people what we want. It's our pool. They did not take care of it. Did not take care of it at all last couple of years. And believe me, if you don't take care of that pool winter and summer, it goes to hell real quick. But they come in here and they say, we spent all this. They didn't spend anything. I had the check in my hand. It was $1.4 million from Longwood Foundation. Didn't cost the Y a cent. And they agreed that it was a family-run pool, just like it always was. They wanted to take credit for having a pool outside. So I'm getting tired. Same thing we do with Kennett Township. They run over us. Same thing we do when we're talking about the fire and EMS. Now we're going back with it. We should never have left it until we were sure. Now, I'm scared of that because it's going to screw things up. Until we get the right people in there to control that thing and get that administrator in there, we're in trouble. But we can't afford it to be without it. So why do we spend all the time talking about it? You got to decide what you want to do and do it. And we have to be in charge. Bob talked the other night about things on that trail. If you do what I told you to do, you wouldn't have to worry about it. You go to Kennett Township and say, hey, you want sewer? We want the property to the middle of White Clay Creek. That gives us our sewer plant, that gives us the park. The only thing we pick up financially is the mushroom place there and a couple buildings behind Matt's place. That's it. You go to the middle of the White Clay Creek, we pick up to the bridge. And you tell them, that's it. You don't get any sewer unless we come to disagreement. We want paid from before, and we want that property. We want our property in the borough. We want our sewer plant in the borough. We want our 7 acres in the borough. We want our Pennick Park in the borough. We're paying for it. They're not. And you write them a letter and you say, this is it. This is the big negotiating point. You want sewer? We'll give you all you could afford if you pay for it all. I'd love to negotiate it for you. And they wouldn't like me at all, and that's tough. But we got to start taking charge. Quit being so damn nice to people. Your first obligation is to these people, to the citizens of this borough, not to be friends with every other township. If they want to be friends, fine. But they take advantage of us every chance they get. And it was a clear example of that the other night with the Y. And you know how I feel about the sewer. So, but you people got to start taking charge. You're hurting me and you're hurting all us other citizens.
Thank you.
Charlotte Watson, 523 Magnolia Street, Kennett Square. Which John's talking about is what I had as administrator and other people didn't. They called me to gather jams, and when I got there, the kids were looking like mice, just as quiet, just as quiet and behaved, and I could talk to them very relaxed. Because you have to have an authoritative voice, and that's what you don't like about me. And I project it intentionally many times. You have to put what the kids say, put some bass in it. And when those men come up here, you don't have to ask them no questions about the pool you own. And they don't need to come here and be telling us anything about that, other than why they did what they did and what they want to, how they're going to prove it. We didn't hear that. They put the onus back on us, money-wise and responsibility-wise. And somebody here should have spoke up and put the hammer on them. Okay? You can do that. You have to be brave when you don't want to be brave. They called me about a man flashing on 4th Avenue in Coatesville, and the kids was out in the modulars. Who had to go? I don't want to go out there, but it was real. And I had to go and investigate it. Thank God he was gone. You know, what would I have did if he wasn't? But we have to do that before the security comes in, because we had a police force. So I'm trying to say you folks are not being the authority you need to be. You were elected by the people. You're able to run the government for the people, and all the benefits are supposed to be for the people. And what you shut me down? No, you can't shut me down. I have a right to freedom of speech, and I have a right to call you out personally by name. And if for your actions, not the false accusation, not the curses, and not the name call, but when you put yourself in this position, you put yourself in the public eye, and that's the cost that goes with it. Ask Kevin McCarthy, poor guy, beating him down there. Ask Pelosi. And the worst thing is to ask Obama. The things that were said personally and publicly to him, because we're allowed to. But I wouldn't insult
Thank you, Ms. Watson. Being no more public comment, we'll move to the consent agenda. From the items from Monday, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I will move to approve the consent agenda.
Second. Any council discussion? Being none, all in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Now we have two items for further discussion, and actually, or no, there's three. We're gonna remove the council meeting minutes because I think the 11th, they're showing as draft, and Borough Manager wasn't sure if they were just draft, ready to be prepared for council or not. So we're gonna hold off on both the 11th and the 13th until the next meeting. So we're gonna go to Public Works, considering the contract for phase 1 of the Willow Street project.
Thank you, Council President Durfler. We are asking that we move this consideration to next month. So Rob walked through, and you weren't here, he walked through last meeting, some of the reasons for doing that. Something happened with the contract. So he's working on a really short timetable. So just asking that we pull this from the agenda.
Any objections from council? Considering the approval for the finance of the new police station.
Yeah, so it sounded like there was a desire for more discussion on this. We're happy to go through that. Just to clarify some questions from earlier, the grant funds, there are two separate state funds, grants awards, one for Birch Street at 2 million and one for this police station at 2 million and one for Birch Street at about 1.6 million. Both have been awarded, announced, publicly sort of given to us. It's clear, it's solid, but the reimbursement grants. So that's just how the state grant system works. So ARPA, on the other hand, the federal stimulus was upfront cash. This just doesn't work that way. So the discussion is, how do we fund that intermediate time, knowing we have a firm commitment, but also knowing we don't have that much cash on hand, and we certainly don't want to give back all of that money. So that's the challenge here tonight. I would say, just for perspective, we are going to have back in November the bids for the police station. So there's not an imminent need to vote on this tonight. If there's a desire to push it, to have more discussion, we can certainly have that vote in November.
So if I missed this from Monday, what are we approving tonight? Or what's the motion?
I don't think there was a motion made. There was a series of financing options laid out, and we didn't get to option A or B or C. So unless there's a clear desire to move forward, I think, given, we're going to go through a budget tonight, I think it's valuable to just push the discussion.
Any other discussion from council before, and if there's a motion to approve ABC, then so be it. But if not, is there any discussion before a motion's made?
No, so those bids are coming for the contract in November. So this would be voted on at the same meeting. Right. Right. Right.
Couple questions, if I may.
Yeah.
I mean, my questions on Monday were really around the concept, not the concept of the financing. The financing is the right thing to do because you got to do the projects to get the funds. So it certainly makes sense. My only concerns were that we get the cash we need only when we need it and the amount we need, and not carry that loan for a day longer than we have to, just because we're paying for that money. I think the Del Val rates are good, the best by far. So I'm fine with that. And then secondly, I just want to make sure that we know with, 90 9% certainty or whatever a reasonable level of certainty is in terms of what the total cost of the construction for the police department will be. And we'll know that better in November, plus just to make sure that any of those other capital items like furniture that we discussed are included in the cost, whether we use that contract or not. I just want to know what the total all-in costs are with some contingency. So we know what we're financing. We know we have the money. We know we'll get the whole project done. And then thirdly, that we don't lock ourselves into long-term debt, that this is just a line of credit, so to speak, not long-term. We use it, we get the funds, we pay it down, it's gone. We don't carry it any longer than that. So, I mean, those were my only comments. I'm happy to offer a motion to accept Del Val as our financier based on those conditions, if it helps us move the project along quicker, but it's all contingent on knowing the exact numbers and so forth. So your call.
So Bob, what was your motion?
Is it better? Do you want it?
I mean, if
I
you
said-
wait until.
I suggest we just pull it because we
Okay.
need to
Yep.
discuss further to figure out what everyone's comfortable with as far as, because the question is, you need the 2 million in cash flow financing for this building. Because the refund times on that are years, right? The library is still years out. The Birch Street funding is a quicker turnaround time. So we've been advised by our grant consultant that that could be a matter of months to get it back. So it's a good discussion for council. How much risk are you willing to take on from a cash flow perspective? It's not as significant as the need here, but certainly you don't want to miss construction payments. So it's a long way of saying, let's just take the next month, make sure we get it right, with the risk being that, interest rates could continue to go up.
I have a question, because if we're gonna have a little bit of time, does it make sense to separate out those two projects? Because you could pay down the principal early with the grant reimbursement that comes in early, but if they don't recast the loan, you're gonna be paying interest on the entire principal. Right? So is that right, Nick? I mean, I would assume that even if we made a partial principal payment, it's not going to change our interest payments. We're going to be paying interest on the total. So if they don't recast it, then there's no point in paying it off early, right? Which is against what we're saying we should do. So I wonder if it makes sense to have two products, one for each one, so that you could pay one down faster or restructure the bid. Do you see what I'm saying? Because there's no, unless I'm completely wrong, I just want to make sure if we're taking the time that we evaluate all the options.
There's a reason why we grouped the two projects together that helped us get, better terms. In
Yes,
other words, to kind of group those together.
Just quickly, the primary reason I remember is that we have a cash imbalance and that we have a lot more cash available for this project as opposed to Birch, because Birch is a local grant that's then used as a match for a higher state grant. So by putting them together, we have a lot more cash available for the two of them as opposed to one that we don't have a whole lot.
I mean, I'm
But
sure that
we'll
you haven't really looked
evaluate
at
it.
it, but I was just thinking through that if the ones you hate to have the rack P money cost you so much money over time, but the other one can get paid off earlier, you'd be paying a lot less interest.
Yeah.
So I wonder if they would even, in the product itself, even offer a recast if you put down a certain amount. Right, so that you're recasting the interest payments.
I think, what,
Well, that's the other thing is you could put it in there to make money, but it's just a thought.
yeah, and I think there's a way that they had structured the deal to kind of put it in segments so that we're borrowing a certain amount at a certain rate, another amount
Okay,
longer term over a different rate, and then, like a third amount over even longer term at another rate.
I'm sure
Yes.
people much smarter than me are already looking at it, but it just seems like a waste of interest money if you can pay down portions.
I think we could take a vote tonight, but I think given the significance of it, let's just make sure we're going into it with everyone fully understanding it. There's no risk other than the interest rate risk. The project is not ready to start next month anyway. So
Mr. President, I'll make a motion to table this item till next month.
Don't even need to do that, but
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Yep, we can move it to the next meeting. All right, those were the only items for further discussion. Do those quickly. We're gonna go to the first workshop, which is the 2024 first budget presentation.
Sure. Well, thank you, Council President. This is, as part of our annual process, our October workshop session. We'll go through the budget. This is relative detail, the same information disclosures as always, which is you can always reach out. We will go through line by line with this budget. We'll have this available on our website probably by tomorrow. This along with a budget message, which is a 5 or 6 page narrative overview of it. And then also the full line item detail. And then within a certain amount of time, I'm not sure exactly, but we'll have our ClearGov system, which then brings in all the narratives and you can see how's this spending comparing to previous years. Then before our Monday meeting in November here at 5:30, we'll have either the second or third year of department directors here. You can come in, you can speak to any of them, you can go through it again in detail. And then we have more public, sessions like this in November and December. So here's the presentation outline. Before I get into that, just a couple quick thank yous. So Nick Bacino, who's our finance director. This is his first year of doing the budget for us, and he's done a really good job with it. And it's also thank you to Sonny, who this is technically his second year, but both of them did a really good job with it. So the overview tonight, I will try to keep it relatively brief, but there's a lot to cover. So it's a review of what we've done this year that leads into the guiding principles for this next budget. Some highlights of the budget itself, next steps, which will be essentially a reminder of those calendar dates, and then open it up for questions and discussions. Again, understanding everyone's getting this cold tonight, so you may not have your questions fully fleshed out. But we've considered what we've done in 2023 and what our staff and council have done together. It really broke down into 8 parts. So we'll go through each of these, and I promise they won't take as long as that seems. So planning, I think we should take a lot of pride in the processes that we've set up. It's, we need great people, but we really need good systems as well that we can replicate. Every spring, we go through a strategic planning process. That's a 10,000-foot view of what we want to see, what the priorities are for the borough. Last year, it was capital, and that flowed into a budget that reflected a capital priority. It should be your high-level discussions about the strategy for the borough. That then goes into the summer, where you're talking about capital, which is the next stair down. So, okay, this is what we prioritize. What are the major items to accomplish it? Then we get into budgeting, which is this season here, which is, okay, here are the minor projects, the contractors, the staffing to fill in to make those a reality. And then starting this winter, we'll do a comprehensive performance review, and we'll put that out there, which is partially, how are we doing internally, and then partially what's the impact externally, with the intent being it's a wrap up for this session, and it pushes us into the strategic planning for next year. And we just do this every single year. Obviously, I think there's a lot of value in doing that. It gives staff direction. It allows us to be efficient and effective. And I hope that we'll continue to do that. Secondly, we've had a real focus on customer service, and obviously that's a focus every year, but we brought on a company for, a few interactions And they basically cold call or email staff and ask questions as if they're a resident, and we get really honest feedback. We get all the data that comes out of that. And it was really interesting data. So the takeaway was we do great when people interact with our people. If residents, customers can get to our staff, they give it a great review. The challenge is that too often it falls between the cracks. So an email gets missed or it goes to a voicemail. And we're just being honest about it. That's what the results were. So it gave us a great direction for what to focus on. So this fall, we're unveiling, we've talked about it a lot, a Kennett Square app. So it makes it easier for people to request things of the borough. Increasingly, more residents want to do things digitally. It doesn't mean we're closing our front door, but we need to give that option for people if that's how they want to interact with the borough. And less talked about, but equally important, it's a project management tool. So it allows us to assign things on the back end quickly, and it makes our staff more effective and efficient. So rather than hire more staff, I'd like to make them more efficient, and this helps us to do that. Capital improvement. So we've sort of beat this to death, but over the last decade, we invested about 1% of the general fund, excluding vehicles, in regular upkeep. And this year we took it to 8%. We paved 8 sections of road this year. Hopefully everyone has noticed that. Kudos to Rob and his team for having a professional identify what roads are to be done. They are not being done out of favoritism. And we just received word last week that Willow Street will also be funded. Rather, a second section of Willow Street will be funded with $350,000 in grant funds. So that'll be another section to add to that. Sorry, this is a little small to read, but it's this is another really great accomplishment of our staff. This year, we started a monthly newsletter, hearing in our strategic planning sessions that we were not communicating as well as we could with the public. We started that in January, February. As of last check, we're over 10,000 subscribers. So to go from 0 to 10,000 in less than a year is really significant. So, I think that's a real accomplishment, and it's quickly becoming one of the largest sources of information in the region. So, yeah. So it's a Kennett Square region, but so it's a lot of subscribers, and it's a really good job. We're also doing twice a year a mailed newsletter. We brought that back after hearing that was a desire. We have it 2-sided print. Hopefully everyone saw it, English and Spanish, with the idea being, as much as the monthly newsletters are really great to keep up to date on events and current things, we want to provide a basic floor of information for everyone. So that goes to every door. It's mailed. It's in English and Spanish. So at the very least, everyone is receiving that level of information. Next year, we're taking advantage of a free system, free to us. The state paid for it. It's called Ready Chesco. It's built on this software company, Everbridge. It's popular around the country, but it allows us to send out emergency notifications for free. So when you see, hopefully you all are getting texts or emails when there's a water main break or an emergency. It was just a matter of a member of our staff reaching out to a county, coordinating it, and it's a free service. This is really significant. We try to stress this. I'm not sure it's always put out there enough, but our team has brought in, this is an updated figure, over the last 2 years, about $6.4 million between grants, private donations, and contributions that we've gotten from private developers for, extending a sewer line or something like that. So it's 6.4 million. It compares to 7.5 in total tax dollars. So that's real estate income or real estate taxes, income taxes, all in 7.5, and we've brought in 6.4. So obviously you don't want to count on that money. That's a lot. But you know, it's worth noting that you know, going to taxpayer revenue is not the first option. The first is let's see if we can go get grants for it. Personnel, this has been a challenge for us. I mean, we've lost people due to retirement. We've lost some that have been, you know, hired away by other municipalities, and some just didn't want to work here anymore. So, you know, we're proud of the people that we've hired back. I think we've got a really good team, and you know, one of my main challenges for next year is how do we pool together enough, you know, A, resources, but B, just building the culture of working here to keep these people. We're really on the curve. We're doing a lot of training and a lot of learning. We want to keep those people now that we found good ones. We want them to be invested here. So it's a real challenge, but hopefully we're making progress there. I apologize, it's another small one here, but it's because there's a lot of good stuff on it. So again, this is Nick's first full year as our finance director. We received a clean audit, which is no comments or findings. Our credit rating was upgraded from A3 to A2, and really our last finance director, Lisa, deserves a lot of credit for that. We believe it'll be upgraded again because that didn't include the additional tax revenue, which helps your rating. So we expect that to happen in 24. And we also received recognition, we mentioned this from GFOA, which is a national organization, saying that this is the highest form of recognition they can give a budget. So, you know, policy aside, as far as the execution of your tax dollars, it's all above board, and I think we've got a lot to be proud of. We should also be, you know, I think proud of the fact that people want to be here. It obviously creates challenges, but whatever you think of new development, it's clear that a lot of people are investing in the borough. And as long as we can make sure that that development reflects our priorities, it's a good problem to have, that people want to be here. And so I think it's a credit to not just us, but what people have done before us to make that community desirable. The principles as we looked at the 2024 budget, you know, let's make sure that we're following the priorities that we set forth, right? That's the point of going through those exercises. It was capital and communications really came through. Third was housing, which is frankly a little more challenging to come up with concrete solutions on. Maintain the level of service for residents. So making sure that we still have a safe place to live and a friendly staff and things like that. And then minimizing the cost to residents, as we talked about before. The proposed budget for 2024 has no increase in the general services or capital tax rates, no increase in water, sewer, or parking fees. It calls for a 7% increase in the garbage fees, which is a pass-through account. That's our contract. And it does call for a 1.15 mil increase for fire and EMS services. So this is a breakdown, which hopefully makes it a little bit clearer. You know, to the discussion earlier, if the library tax is approved, it would go on there as a separate line item. So that's our plan. Yeah. The only challenge is that the library is asking for 0.2 mils and we're budgeting 40,000, which is less than 0.2. So it may not be a 1-for-1 swap, but you know, it's a policy decision to make. It's a referendum. Yeah, I mean, they made that without talking to us. It's a policy decision for council what our tax rate is, but they're independent of us. It's on a referendum. Mhm. Right, right. I'm just, no, I'm just telling you. I'm just telling you. No, I'm telling you, no, I'm not. What I'm saying is we've got, I don't know the exact number, but 0.15 mils worth of money going to library and they're calling for 0.2. So it may not be a 1-for-1 because we don't have 0.2 for the library in our budget. That's what I'm saying. Because they're asking for 50 something and we have 40 in our budget.
40,000 that we have in our budget versus 52 is what the 2 million.
Okay.
2 million checks.
Does that make sense?
That's correct.
Right, but we don't have, yeah. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Oh, did you have a question? If it's a question.
What's that?
40.
40. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Right. Yeah, that, so that's an overview of our budget. Wanna? Yeah, I know you are. We're presenting it to you. So I want to go through and talk about, because there are 3 elements here, right? There's holding our budgets in line, finding grant dollars, and then getting free services where we can get them, right? That's the county free service for communication. That's grants that we talked about. This is the 3rd one. Like, okay, looking at our budget, are we holding our, people accountable to what we're spending? So there's a few anecdotes here. The budgeted admin and finance personnel spending is lower than it was budgeted for 2023. The budgeted 2024 admin, finance, and code enforcement spending is up 0.66% since 2022. If you take out the printed mailer that we brought back, that spending is down from 2022. The budgeted 2024 sewer and water personnel spending, so the actual people we have in the building, is down 58% or 12% from 2020.
58,000.
Yes. And budgeted now I'm having trouble reading it. Budgeted 2024 non-personnel police spending is up 0.38% from 2023 budget. And all in with personnel, it's 3.23. So I bring these things up because a lot of the challenges of our staff turnover is that we've lost people who were really experienced, and that was tough. But we have gotten less expensive, and I think we're doing a good job of it. And I think we're being pretty responsible with public money. So those show that. Why raise taxes for fire and EMS services? We went through a team of us in consultation with other members of council since July. We've been meeting 2.5, 3 hours twice a week, every week, reviewing what our options are. So think of all the area service providers. We've talked to all of them. We reviewed our options, and at this time, the regional commission is the only option. There's never been a question of the service that they provide. It's always been great service. It's just figuring out how do we, work through the financing on our end. Costs are rising dramatically. There's likely an element of catch up in that department. And candidly, we don't have these funds to cut from other departments. We really don't. We've scrimped and saved and we don't have it. We're already looking at, we haven't looked at a few of those, but we're already looking at fundraising and grant opportunities for it because that's how we do everything here. So yeah. Yeah, yeah, and I think we all feel the challenges we've got funding, not just for fire EMS, but across, so we're at a point where we need to be creative like that. So we're there. This is a review of where we've been and where it's going. It's a significant increase. There's probably elements of catch up in there. And this is what, our region has voted to increase to fund what is felt to be needed. Yes, our regional commission. So it's calling for a 1.15 mil increase to cover that. It is a separate dedicated fund. It'll show up on your taxes as that. Nick, is it going to show up as fire and EMS or is it emergency? What's the exact language on there? Okay, I think it's fire. Okay. And we've really engaged with the commission over the last couple of months, and I think that I think it's a credit to our elected officials for really building a good relationship starting point there. So hopefully this is a step in the right direction. Yep. Yeah, there's a lot of work left to be done. Again, I went through this, but just reiterating next steps, we'll send this out through our communication channels, but please reach out to us, come to these events, learn more about the budget. If you find savings that were wasted money somewhere, we'd be happy to go ahead and accept it. So those are the items. And then, again, we're welcome to talk. It'll be on our website. And it'll be, the printed budget will be for review, if anyone wants that as well. Sure. We do that. Let me think about that because I want to protect our employees, but I understand it. I do. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah.
Anything else from council? Charlie, did I see your arm?
Yeah. What do you mean? Recount the numbers? Can you go back a few slides to that one, Sonny? Oh, yeah. Is this, let's see. Yep. Couple more,
16.
Sonny. There is, I think that's it. So the taxes that are going to borough functions in the, in this building and the police station, there's no tax increase on that. There's none for the capital tax that we put in last year. There's no increase in water, sewer, or parking fees. 7% for garbage fees, which is just everyone pays a portion of the contract that we have. We have what, year or two left on that contract? Yeah. Yep. Uh-huh. And then 1.15 mil increase for fire and EMS services. So that, again, that's still a borough tax, but it's not within our function. It's the regional companies.
Right.
Is that
Anything else
good?
from council for now?
Good.
Lot to take in. Look forward to the future meetings.
Sure.
Different visuals work for different people,
Yeah.
but good feedback. All right, let's go.
Mhm.
All right. Good feedback. Thanks, John. All right,
Sure.
we're gonna move on to the next item.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right.
Well, thank you everyone for sitting through that again. The next item here is I wanted to bring up a discussion for council because we're really at a point where we need some direction from staff. We've had turnover in our codes department, so it's an opportunity to shift if we choose to. We've noticed, and probably everyone has, that there are quite a few sidewalks in our town that are not maintained to the level that we'd like. There's a question of how engaged we want to be in that and how much risk we want to take on as far as getting into the middle of that process. So I was hoping, Chris, to the level that you could give us a bit of an overview on that.
So state law and your local ordinance applies. Your local ordinance requires your property owners to maintain their sidewalks in good repair. That is, the sidewalks that are adjacent to their properties. Pretty straightforward. In the event they don't, if it's not in good repair, then the borough has the authority to require them to do that, give them 30 days notice to fix it. They have 60 days to fix the sidewalk. If they don't take action and it's deemed to be a hazard to the public, then the borough could actually fix the sidewalk and then charge the owner. We sue the owner for the cost, plus 10% on top of that under your ordinance. State law, where's the liability? In the event a pedestrian gets hurt on a defective sidewalk located in front of a private residence or a business, that owner of the property would be primarily liable. So what happens is the injured party sues the owner of the property, but then they'll also sue the borough. Under state law, the borough is what's called secondarily liable, meaning that if the plaintiff prevails at trial, wins an award of money, and the property owner doesn't pay, the borough pays. Right? That's the law. That's the law. And that's been in effect as long as I can remember. Yes. The question is, will you hear it if you're not there? No, I'm sorry. You know what? That. Yeah. Yeah. It is a dilemma, right?
Well, and I think
Right,
that
so let-
this is all gonna tie in. So I'm not cutting you off, John, but this is, let's get what do we need to
I'll lay
fix?
out,
and then
I
we
think
can-
I'll lay out the law and then the policymakers can
Yeah.
discuss the pros and cons of what is to be done with sidewalks that are out maintained, right? So that's essentially the law. That's the liability. That's what they have to deal with. And I'll probably cut myself short because now it's a policy decision as to how aggressive will the borough governing body address the situation. That's entirely up to them. You know, there is a general duty of the government to make sure that you live in a safe environment. But there's accountability on the part of the business owners and the private property owners too. So I think that that's the type of discussion that you're evoking tonight, given the parameters of the law.
So what's been done to this point?
So, yeah,
Is there a process in place?
so I've been in my residence for 21 years
Mhm.
and I don't have a sidewalk, but my neighbors do. And I have definitely two neighbors who have been cited by the borough and have had to fix their sidewalks that are, and one it's the back of their house, one it's the front of their house. I also have had neighbors who either in the process of buying or selling their home have had to fix their sidewalks. So my question is, when did we stop citing people for sidewalks?
Well, I understand that we still do at sale. The question,
Hold on, John, just, you don't need to say something with everything. You don't.
the question here is,
John, let us have our discussion, please.
it's just a question of, do you want us doing it every time we do an inspection of a home from a codes perspective? So administratively, it's not a whole lot of extra work when you're at a site inspecting a rental or inspecting, a commercial business to look down and cite it. It's just a policy question of how much of that responsibility do you want to own? How in the middle of that process do you want to get? So it's, feels like the legal is relatively clear. The administrative function of it is relatively clear, but it's a policy risk question. We don't have to have a conclusion today, but I think it's a good question for everyone to start to think through. I thought,
That was something. And then when not just sidewalks, curb, it has to get fixed. So at what point did we stop doing that? And then is our liability more if we stop, or is our liability less if we stop?
That's a great question. That I can answer. I understand it, and I'm a little rusty on my political subdivision for Claims Act days, but every case is going to be judged on its own merits. I'll just give you the quick legal answer. So in the event someone gets hurt, it's going to be dependent upon that particular piece of real property. Was it defective? Did you have notice of it? And did it cause the injury? I don't think the court is going to look at the broader policy, I know they won't. It's a good question. They will not look at whether you had an aggressive or passive policy of inspecting. They're going to be looking at that particular piece of property, whether there is notice and whether there is an injury. I think that's where the duty is probably going to end in the eyes of the court. So it gives you flexibility to determine how aggressive you want to be broadly.
Either way, the point is that we're making it safer for everyone to maneuver the town and less and more.
Right. In your theoretical instance there, we would be better off if we had cited that property and someone got hurt, like the borough itself, as opposed to have not cited and their sidewalk would have been in disarray.
Sure, that's the Monday morning quarterback. Sure, anytime, in assuming, for the sake of argument, that that piece of ground was defective, sure. We never want to endorse a turn a blind eye to.
Right.
You know, but yeah, the short answer is yes.
There's a,
Rob, did you want to add something?
Could you use the mic, Rob, just so it comes up on there? Thank you.
I didn't know this was you.
I know the new shades.
The neighbors who I know that on sick were not selling, and they were home. Currently.
no, I don't personally think it's our neighbor's responsibility to kind of rat us out in terms of whether our sidewalk is good or bad. I mean, one of the beautiful things about the borough is it's so walkable. And any day you'll see people walking up and down and all around. And when you look at a mom or someone even worse in a wheelchair, you know, or a walker, there are a lot of sidewalks in this town that are hazardous for folks. And I personally think that sidewalks are one of the best things about the borough and how walkable it is. So I think it's our job, not our neighbors' jobs, to police which side. Now the questions, a couple of questions, right? One of them is, what's a bad sidewalk, right? You walk up and down Broad Street or on State Street, you know, or any of the streets that have a lot of sidewalks, and there's some that are horrible, right? You're taking your life in your hands. The front of the train station, right? The beautiful used to be nice one, you know, years ago, but now it's a horrible sidewalk to walk, you know, right across the street, right? But then there's others that are just not great. You know, I know that Dan Maffei, I'm sorry, a couple of years or terms ago actually did a survey of all the sidewalks and labeled them, you know, A, B, C or whatever. So we have that now, that's dated. But my 2 cents is that's our job. And the problem is you're looking at a $10,000 bill, right? For a sidewalk in front of the average house, it is not cheap. So are we going to say to folks, you know, you now have to spend 10 grand or whatever it costs to fix it? That's a big nut for folks to pay. But I'm also struggling saying there's a lot of sidewalks that are crummy, and we have a rule in our books, you know, called enforcement of ordinances and laws, which we're not doing consistently, to your point, Kathleen.
What if it is one of the shade trees that's popped?
We met, Rob and I met with the Shade Tree Commission, and this is another area we need to look at. And I think we made it pretty clear that safety on the sidewalk comes before the tree. So if the tree has to come down, correct me, Rob.
Well, I mean, that was the discussion we had with the St. Pete.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's another wacky part, to be honest with you. The Shade Tree Commission right now, the Borough Public Works is responsible to trim the shade trees. When it's coming down or when there's a problem, they need to trim it. But it's the homeowner's responsibility to pull a bad tree down, to cut it down and to replace it and put up a $300 bond for a year to make sure that tree survives. So and we did look, or at least try to look at, can we change some of those rules? It's an onerous thing for the borough to have to be responsible for every shade tree in the borough. But we looked at it, and correct me, I don't think we can change that, right? Okay, it's a state rule.
Can't, there's state grants that are for trees, and I just heard about a whole bunch of them that were, granted for Harrisburg, Pittsburgh, maybe.
Yeah. And there's other ordinances that require that because there's a lot of sidewalks when you walk around that, have trees or shrubs or bushes or even grass in some cases that are, starting to take over the sidewalk. Again, if you got a stroller, it's not an easy place to walk around at times.
I agree, Bob, that's a big nut to ask people to handle, but nut's only gonna get bigger, longer that.
Yeah.
So.
And even if the homeowner would be sued too, that could be more than the $10,000 then too.
Tell them, see, we're helping.
Yeah, we're actually helping you. And then to John's point too, it's just like, do we concrete or do we use herringbone brick pattern? It's kind of what's. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To me, it's not whether it's brick or concrete or whatever. It's can you take a wheelchair or a stroller and walk down and not, put anything at risk?
Falling apart.
It is falling.
Where do you live again?
That's the character of Kenneth.
Mr. Mayor, did you want to add something?
I totally agree that it's,
Hold on, John.
are you?
John.
I totally agree that it's our responsibility to enforce it, but I know that there's a lot of our residents that can't pay that bill. And that's really why it's part of the UNO responsibility, right? In theory, you should have more money when you're selling your home, so you've got the cash to be able to put it out. I really would like to see us investigate a grant for funding so that folks that can't afford it can borrow it from the borough and then repay it back when they sell or over some terms. Because there are folks that it would really mean the difference between what they can afford for the next month if we enforce it. And our enforcement arm only makes it worse because the enforcement arm is fines, right? So it just takes more and more money. So I would like to see if we're gonna have a policy that says we're really going to look after it, that we look for a grant opportunity, and maybe we had, 15, 20, well, we take more than that. You probably need $100,000 that would be lent out to do it and paid back over time or paid back, and certainly at resale. Otherwise, I think we're going to put residents in personal jeopardy.
That would be great. Counselor Gerber, if you could just, sounds like there's some consensus for us to build out a program and look at this closer. Does that change our liability if we get into this and we miss one? Does that change? Because my understanding was that if you have a clearer program and then you miss one, you have a responsibility to cite it and follow up. And if you miss it, then you become more liable. Is that correct?
Yeah, as I understand it, and I can certainly get back to you, but I think it's pretty simple. I think that each case is judged by its own merits. The particular property, the particular notice, particular defect, and the injury. I think the courts are going to be looking at that. So you might have the best program in the world and aggressive and monitoring the whole borough, and you missed one, or you have nothing and you turn a blind eye and you still have the same injury. I don't think it changes your liability. I don't think it's going to affect your insurance, and I don't think it's going to affect a court determination on that particular case. So you're left with really how do we want to aggressively pursue this to protect the public without, I don't think liability comes into that play. I think that, Joel, you made a good point that if you are aware of it, you better be making sure that you're doing something about it. You do not turn a blind eye. Hopefully I answered the question. So you can have a stellar program. It's not going to mitigate your liability if you miss it over here and there's evidence that had notice of it and you did nothing. Does that answer the question?
It does. I think we're getting consensus here,
Mhm.
but I would
You
like
don't
to
get an
have,
extra star, you know,
Right.
for having a great program.
I would like, But
If
I-
you're liable, you're liable. Like if again, someone made a complaint and the borough knew it or should have known about it, and someone got hurt, you're still gonna be on the hook for it.
all right, so it sounds like there's consensus. I'd like to get a little more legal background on it because that's not how I understood it. So if it's not correct, then,
I just think that since I can remember, we've promoted a walkable community. And I know that there's been instances where we required sidewalks where there wasn't one. There's a new new development. We're going to require sidewalks now, all with making it more walkable. So there's an obligation to make the walkability safe walkability. So. This isn't your only question. You've had 24 tonight. I've literally notched them down. I've heard a lot how well it was run. Absolutely. I see you, Charla, and I know you're raising your hand because I let John have one more. John, every time I let you answer, I have to let her, so. No, go ahead, Charla. Go ahead. Yep. Mhm. Well, So to Mrs. Watson's point, I mean, this is one of those, we have to look at the education, what options we're providing as well. If there are people that will do smaller jobs. So I do think there's a lot of good options there. It's not just big government's going to come in and tell everybody fix it and it has to be $20,000 to do. Let's see how we can do it. So. But. Right.
Careful.
It does sound like we have some consensus, though, that this is a priority and we'll work toward either the policy, but looking at the. Anything else? Oh. Really, Ken? No, you waited. I did. What's that?
You waited too long.
We're talking about sidewalks, not trees.
Horrible.
Oh, the trees going up Cypress? Yeah. Fair.
You saw that coming.
Yep. All right. Well, point taken. Anything else from council tonight? Myra, you're going to run the rest of the meetings because you're. Anything else from council tonight? Anything, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Manager?
No.
All right, meeting adjourned.